Welcome back, everybody, to Lit versus Genre. I am Steve.
And I'm Jeff.
And, okay, we're back to Rand now. Rand and
Man,
Matt, the ultimate buddy team up comedy. They're
absolutely.
they're going around, they're entertaining, they're juggling,
That's right. That's
they're
how they roll these
they're
days.
playing the flute. They've got a
But
whole
not the
new
harp.
they've got a whole new gig, a whole new bag now. They've reinvented
Hmm.
themselves. And they're
Yeah.
like, forget this Dark One business. We're just going on the road. We
They're
are,
better than sleeping in the bushes. Eh?
yeah, yeah. Well, presumably, except it doesn't really turn out that way. Um, but yeah, so let's get into this chapter.
Let's do it.
Honestly, we could have
Mhm.
just gone to the next chapter. This is another like length thing where I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
really nothing happened in this chapter. And like I'm getting kind of to this point where there are these characters and I'm like, should I invest in these new
Mm.
characters at all? And I just knew because after my traveling people, I kind of just knew. I was like, this family that they come across, which they even set up again, like girls are just falling all over themselves over Rand every 2 seconds. But I'm like, I'm
I
not getting.
mean, the
I'm
boy
not.
is tall.
He's tall. That's
That
I
boy is
hear.
tall.
I hear that is attractive to women.
Uh,
But like I was like, I'm not gonna care about these people because I knew in my heart they were just gonna be gone in like no time. So I was like, why? Couldn't we have just had like a little bit more montagey? Had this at the beginning of the last chapter. I didn't really understand why we spent time with these folks.
what blows my mind in this is we go back in time and then go back in time within the back in time. It's
Did we?
amazing.
I didn't
Yeah,
even.
no, we totally do, right?
I
The
didn't
reason
even
you
know
didn't
that.
notice is because we never actually come back to the current time that we left, at least not within these two chapters.
Ah,
Um, so like the chapter before, the first chapter, looking at
because
this
we
one here,
went
notice how it,
forward in time is what we
mm,
do at the beginning because we're like they're way ahead on this
right,
road and we kind of
yeah, they're way out on
hear
the road.
about
Right, right,
how
right.
they've been ducking into the bushes all this time whenever
Exactly,
the dust
exactly,
comes
right.
up, so we kind of jumped ahead. And then
Hmm.
yeah, we get that
And then
like
we
kind
jump
of,
back.
yeah, we get that kind of like
Hmm.
him just sort of remembering their journey up to this point.
Right. So we get the journey back. It says not begun like this journey down the Camlin Road, and then for a long time after leaving Whitebridge. So that's where
Right.
we like kind of go back in real time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then during that, there's a jump back in time, and that's so I was like, is this a double jump back in time? I think it is.
Whoa.
So that
The
what I thought was like
fabled double jump back in
the
time.
fabled jump back in time. I need to like find where it is. But anyway, the point is because like while they're because we basically it turns into kind of real time with them because like we're meeting a family and stuff like that, right?
Right.
But during that, he remembers something else they did before that. So it's like anyway, but yeah, what I think is interesting is yeah, I don't understand why it didn't start with like I don't know why we've got them hiding in the bushes. Like I get maybe it's like a little sense of foreboding about the dust and seeing that, but really this story to me begins with the for a long time after leaving Whitebridge, right? So that's the montagey. We're leaving. Let me tell
Mm-hmm.
you about the times. Now I get what you're saying
Mm-hmm.
that the Four Kings is the set piece, right? Obviously that's more the set piece chapter here. And so yeah, I mean if this was not epic fantasy, where we didn't need to, kill a small animal if we dropped a book on them. Yeah, we would just jump to the Four Kings. But we're not doing regular fantasy. We're doing epic fantasy here. And
But
that
that,
means set up. All
that
set up for
means
days.
setup. I mean,
Yeah.
is that what that means? Because I mean, there's nothing terribly epic about like hanging out with this sweet fam
Uh,
and
right.
performing for our dinner for them. Like I guess the point of this is that they kind of happen
Big
upon
idea.
their new vocation after going like
Exactly.
farm work
Mhm.
sucks. But again, all of that could be told very quickly in that he's
Uh,
already doing like the jump back kind of saying
right.
what has been going on I don't understand why like you could spend 2 sentences on that. And again, I
But
know I
would
can.
it be as fun?
Would it
Would
be
it
as
be as fun?
fun? Yes, it would be way more fun because this is not fun going
Uh,
through this. And like I can already hear in the comments Scott telling me that I have the attention span of a gnat. But like the point is if there's nothing happening, it's not fun to read is the problem. You know, like it's not enjoyable to read if you're just like, "Oh, I just read like a whole chapter and nothing really happened in this chapter of consequence or anything that I feel like is going to come back up later."
Yeah, it's the immersion. So it's funny. I was just reading a thing on Reddit about this. So I was interested. There's a Reddit thread saying, "What are books that you love but you don't recommend to people?" Right?
Mm.
And a number of people said things like Wheel of Time, Game of Thrones, stuff like that,
Mhm.
Malazan, because these are the ones that are known to be these big, heavy epics, like
Mhm. Mhm.
big, right? And it's because they scratch a very particular itch of wanting that immersion. This is, maybe one day when we've got helmets that we can put on to live in a fantasy world, right? Then this won't be needed to scratch some reader's itch. But for a lot of people, they want that living, breathing slice of life, but also the big stuff, storytelling. And so they want that time with the other family to kind of forget the larger than life stuff and kind of live in the day that there are these sort of normal things that they've got to experience. And for me as a reader, I know that I'm someone like that does scratch the itch, but a lot of them talk about how they wouldn't recommend this series to like a first time fantasy reader because it is much more immersive than a lot of people want to read because yeah, all of these little moments aren't some big thing that's directly affecting the plot. Like as we said, it's where they learn their vocation. So it might have been a massive mistake to have you read this as an entry point to epic fantasy is what I'm really getting at. But yeah, so I think
Well,
that's the difference.
I guess my quibble with that is I don't really see why immersion and having things moving forward in the story are have to be at odds with each other. Right? It doesn't feel
Mm,
like they have to be at odds with each other. And your things moving ahead in the story don't always have to be like big like you're saying like big things.
mm,
They're often really quiet moments, small moments that move the story ahead and that have consequence and that have emotional weight and meaning. Like they don't all have to be like set pieces, right? We don't have to jump from set piece to set piece, but like you
mm.
want something I think to be invested in all the time. I mean, I kind of get this mode of like, oh, I'm just here. I'm just learning about this quaint provincial little family. But this part wasn't even terribly like fantasy world. I mean, like this part could have just
Well,
been, a farm anywhere. This could have been in Kansas for this part,
true.
and like so.
The book isn't super fantasy yet, right? Because
Mhm.
especially we're not around, people can use magic right now. We're not near a fade, So
Yeah.
there are these kind of very normal medieval-esque, moments for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I don't feel like they have to go against each other. I kind of feel like it gets a pass maybe a little bit on this criticism because people are like, oh, I just like being here. I get that, but I feel like you don't have to sacrifice one for the other. You know what I mean?
No, I do hear that. I mean, for me, this one, like there were sections that worked for me and didn't. Like I didn't need the dust cloud thing. I could have
Mm-hmm.
been fine. Just start me with tell me what's happened since game one. But from there, I loved it. Like I love the guy who gives them the scarf, but doesn't want any involvement because it's like this little bit of kindness. I like seeing it's a journey of these places they're sleeping to then trying to do chores for people, but sometimes getting chased off because Matt's so twitchy. So we're getting to see like ramifications of the way the characters are as they're continuing to journey and that it sucks. And then, yeah, they stumble on this like, wait, we actually know how to do some stuff. And this feels very normal to me. And I like it because of that, where someone's like, oh, you should do a thing. And it's something that the person who's doing it doesn't even think about. They require someone else to be like, oh, you're good enough. You could get paid for that. They're like, oh, maybe we could. And then that changes, what's happening. And then that puts them in the situation of the Four Kings. So to me, it is this, it's a longer setup. But to me, it does all matter for this story. And like in terms of someone mattering or getting invested, I enjoy them while we're there. So no, to me, I think it does. I think there's moments that don't. But overall, I would say that it does achieve what you're talking about. But I can also understand that from wanting even more out of it, that, that's not happening.
Yeah. Cut it. I cut this chapter.
Yeah.
I wanted an abridged version. This was what I was thinking about that
goodness.
when I was reading. I was like, oh, maybe there. And you're talking
That's
about
the show.
new readers. You're talking about new readers. So here's the thing I was thinking. Like, I'll write a guide to Wheel of Time.
You could, actually.
Where I'm like, here's the stuff, look, straight up, y'all. Not gonna matter. Not gonna be important. Skip this one. Skip chapter 31. Go to chapter 32, which we're gonna talk about chapter 32. Definitely,
chapter 32.
More is happening, but again, I have some some complaints. But I was like really thinking that I was like, I could really do with a nice little guide here of like, look, here we're just kind of like, here, lots of crows. One sentence, boom, you can skip this chapter. You're on to the next chapter and something's happening. Just like for people who aren't like, oh, I just want to like live in this amazing fantasy world. I just actually want to get the story. That would be my little service.
That's I mean, a lot of people bounce off this for a reason, right? And I was going to say, it's funny because what you're talking about, this is what happens in anime a lot. So you'll have like a huge anime like Naruto or One Piece or something. And what'll happen is the studio that's producing the anime will end up getting ahead of where the writer of the manga is, right? And so then they got to create filler. Yeah. So there's these list outs there, just here are all the episodes you just don't even need to watch, right? And I actually did that, and I have thought back and be like, should I watch those? To me, it was like, well, they weren't written by the original creator, right? And so I was like, but maybe there would be some stuff in there that I love, basically like almost fan fiction or people that are familiar with it. Like, why am I not giving it a chance since I am someone that likes this stuff, right? But I would say like I did use that, and obviously there's still lulls where the writer planned them, but it does let you stay on track with the story, like with the plot, like we're talking about. So this type of thing does exist. And it would be fascinating if you put something out like that once we're finished with this book.
Right.
All right. So we're on to the Four Kings with there was just one last quick thing with the end of this chapter. Because I have been thinking a lot more about kind of like reveals. And I do think it is worthwhile for us to, and again, I'm more wanting to make sure, I'm clear on it because I think I am, that something like this where it's something the character doesn't know, right? And then which is not this case, but like the character knows there's a mystery and they're going to solve it. That's not a reveal because that's known. We know the character doesn't know that. Here, obviously, but then they came to the Four Kings. For me, that sort of setup works because I know it's going to be answered in like the very next chapter. Right. You know what I mean? Like I like that little ender. And I just, in case people are listening and they're like, what sort of reveals are we talking about? I just want to put out there, this isn't the first one that I was saying where it's something the character doesn't know and they're searching to find. This is more just kind of like a little, hey, fun thing, and I'm about to tell you. How does this classify for you in that reveal sense?
Yeah, this is fine. It felt a little like bum bum bum.
Totally.
Kind of like that.
Music. I wanted the music. I did.
But I'm not angry at it in like a reveal type way where you're just like intentionally keeping something from me and the only reason I'm supposed to keep reading is to find out why. Yeah. This is just to kind of go, look, it's actually like after this chapter, I was very happy to be told, oh, something's going to happen now, which is basically what this like end thing is doing. Yeah. It's like giving me a promise. Hey, don't worry, guys. Bad stuff's going to go down in Four Kings. And I'm like, good. Thank you.
No, completely. Cool. I figured as much, but I just thought for clarity for listeners and for me, it seems more it's the reveal of like character motivation that we could have known, right? Like that's more the kind of issue. So yeah, let's get into Four Kings. I've got thoughts, but I'm happy to hear yours first, please.
Yeah, so they get into this whole situation, which I kind
Mm-hmm,
of appreciated. It was kind of fun that they kind of get trapped in here. They know they're gonna get robbed on one hand.
right.
There's this creep looking dude on the other hand who, I mean, again, your first guess is gonna be he's a dark friend.
Right,
He ends
right.
up being a dark friend. There's not really like much kind of being held here, and even like that as a reveal, I didn't mind because again, like yeah,
Yeah.
like the characters don't know that. It doesn't feel like the author's just keeping something
Sure.
from me intentionally. It's like, oh, this is something that they don't know. There's a guy in here, and they have to speculate the same way that I have to.
Well,
Um,
and they're speculating. I think that's the
yeah,
key, right? Like
yeah,
they're actively thinking about
yeah.
this thing, as opposed they weren't constantly thinking about why is Tom helping us, right? I mean, they
Right,
say it a couple times, right?
right.
But like, I think that's an important distinction between
Yeah.
these moments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I dug all that. You know, I dug this kind of setup. I like
Mhm.
that they were kind
Mhm.
of trapped in this and kind of going
Right,
like,
right.
oh, okay, how are they going to get out of this?
Totally.
Which brings us to how they get out of
Brings us.
this.
Yep.
So this is Deus Ex Machina number 2 in like the span of
Mhm.
what, like 4 chapters or something. And again, I'm sure this is some magic-y magic thing. It's gonna get explained
Magic-y
away a little bit later, but right now, like what? Like how unsatisfying is that after, especially I'm kind of like invested in this setup. I'm like, oh, okay, this is cool. This is interesting. I want to know how they're going to get out of it. And like literal lightning, it's
Oh,
a
yeah.
literal lightning bolt that saves them here. Like what?
Yep.
Man, I'm getting a little discouraged about things in this book, Jeff.
Yeah, no, I figured this would be a chat, right? About it.
Yes.
I mean, so it's it's so interesting moments like this, right? Remind me though, real quick, just so I've got the framework. What was the other one before this? Because I know you're
The
right. I'm
walking over the
blanking out.
line again. I like you
Yes.
said. I
Oh,
think
yeah,
they
right,
mentioned
right.
whatever it was called, the area that the one power doesn't work in.
Right.
I mean,
But they hadn't said it before. That wasn't a thing that they had talked about before.
yeah,
Like they had just said ogre settings, but
right,
we don't learn that power doesn't work there
right.
until at least unless I'm forgetting, right? But until he tells them,
Mm-hmm.
oh, and ogre settings, you can't use the
Right,
one power,
right.
which I love as world building. It's like so cool, and that I said I don't want to go there, and I think that's what happens to me in moments like this. I'm like, that's so awesome. And then like
Wait, but what's
completely
awesome about that? That the one power
well,
doesn't like. There's nothing
oh,
about
I
that
like
that doesn't scream "get out of jail free" card.
right,
Like I
no,
don't.
right, but no, I know, but I'm not thinking about that. I'm thinking more like the world building side, the idea that like he talks about how Aes Sedai don't like staying there because they're cut off from this like
But
power that they can
I feel
use
like the
and stuff.
world wasn't built though, because I still don't know
Mhm.
why that's the
Why that
case.
exists
Yeah.
completely. So it's a taste of it, which makes me go, oh, that's neat world building. I'm sure there's more to it, and that
Mm-hmm.
makes me excited for that, as opposed to a solution to a problem. Because I again completely agree. And if we were just talking about solutions to problem, you walk over invisible line that nobody knew about,
Right.
never talked about before,
Right.
totally safe, kind of. you know, and I think that's another thing that kind of works is that they're not safe. They're attacked by white cloaks there and everything, so it's a false sense of security. But on paper, I totally okay. So that was the second. So for this one, uh, yeah, how? Because like you said, you're saying you believe it to be magic and magic, but since we don't really know, it feels well lucky, right? And especially that like everybody's blown away. It's not just the hole in the wall. It's
Yeah. I
the
mean,
corridor, they're outside. Everybody's laid low,
there's
basically.
got to be a magicy reason because it's like this
Mhm.
is insanely lucky.
Right,
It just wouldn't
right.
happen. So I get that. So maybe you can say it's not a true Deus Ex Machina, but then like
Mhm.
but then it's revealy. Like that's the other thing. Like, oh, I gotta find
Mhm.
out later what was this random thing that
Right.
save them
Right.
right here. And like I don't it that's like a Sophie's choice there. It's either it's a Deus Machina or it's like a reveal that I'm not, super
Right.
happy to find out about.
Well,
Even if I
it's
knew,
continuing to lean into
again,
that.
even if I knew right now, like I was expecting
Mhm.
there to be like some other wizard, or I
Right.
wasn't expecting Moraine to be there because I think Moraine's going after Perrin right now. But
Mhm.
like,
Right.
I was expecting like, oh, I'd say they'll walk out, the wizard would be there. It would still feel pretty much just like, oh, we got really lucky here. But at
Mhm.
least I would like know what was up. Now I have both where I'm like, well, I don't know why that happened. I guess I'll just read and
Mhm.
find out. Blah blah blah. And or it's just get out of jail free with nothing that
Right.
they did to succeed. I wanted to see them succeed, right? I want to see them like
Right.
do
Right.
something and affect their fate in a way, but they didn't.
No, no, I mean, this definitely is leaning into the who, well, because no one else does seem to be around, right?
Mm,
We know the Dragon Reborn is someone who can channel the one power, right?
mm,
I want to say that they've talked about things Logain did, like they
mm,
talked about how Logain could use the power, right?
mm,
So we've learned some things that can be done with the power. So I think people would know that lightning could come from the power. So
mm,
it does leave that question of, especially because we don't really see Rand feel anything
mm.
here, right? Like this is,
Yeah.
I would say this is fascinating because it's very disconnected. We don't
Mm,
get Matt saying that he felt something strange or behaving strange right before it happens
right.
or after. He's blinded, which I'll talk about in a moment, which I think is interesting. But and same for Rand. We're in Rand's POV, and we don't get a sense of that. And so it is very much like just completely seemingly out of, I mean, I would say it's not out of the blue because there has been this thunderstorm happening the whole time. So the
Right.
thunderstorm is right. So I think that's set up. But then, and it's set up that one of Perrin, Rand, or Matt is likely the Dragon Reborn. And since we
Mm,
followed Rand the whole time, it seems very likely
mm,
that he's the Dragon Reborn, right? And so I do wonder a couple things. One, I think there are some people out there that are like, oh, I think this means he is the Dragon Reborn and he's like
mm,
coming into his power. I can't wait until like he can do that on command or he realizes what he's doing. It's just sort of like happening haphazardly, like he can't control it. Neat. I can't wait to see that control. Right. And so I think there are those people out there that hit a moment like this and don't see it as, oh, solve the problem without doing anything. It's like a promise of, oh, this is the type of stuff he's going to be able to do. Awesome. I want to see magic spells, like stuff like that, right? So there's that type of readership. Then there's the type of readership that is
okay. If
to
we're
figure
doing
out which.
that, let me just
Right?
get in a little
No,
word.
no, go ahead.
If we're
No,
doing
please.
that, do more in this setup. I mean, we've been having like his thoughts,
Right.
right? This could crescendo more or
It could.
something. It could
It
like
could.
there are ways to say it without saying it. If that's what you want to do, that he had a random bolt of one power here.
Right.
There are ways to write that. And that instead of like being completely in the dark about it and just speculating, was that what happened?
Right.
Again, I think it's more interesting to just straight up know that's what's happened.
No, completely, completely. And I think we're just seeing, it's fascinating to go and find all these, right? Because I obviously wasn't looking for these moments
Mm,
the first time I read it of like, what's all the times where information is denied from us, right?
mm.
Which ones are satisfying and which ones aren't. And
Right.
obviously satisfying versus aren't can depend on reader. But I think we're continuing to hit that same thing, right? And some readers might even be feeling, some listeners might feel like, oh, it's the same thing.
Right.
But I think it's fascinating to find that, right? Like, hey, we
Mm,
found one, right? Like this could be the moment where readers like, why have you still not told me? Why was this not a moment of revelation? Because it could have been, right? There's so many ways that this scene could have gone, right? Like I actually I thought I remembered there being more of a revelation than what was written on the page. I was actually like, I read through it and I was like, wow, there's nothing. There's nothing
Right.
that signals the bolt before it happens or in much reaction after it happens.
Mm-hmm.
Like nothing. And so, yeah, it is a hard, I am not telling you anything about this, right? Like that is a choice right there to be like, you get nothing,
Right,
nothing.
right.
There's not even like his hairs rose before hairs, nothing,
Right,
right? It just happens.
right.
And so I think because it's so stark, right, that exacerbates this feeling we're talking about for readers like you that don't want that,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And I think that's really interesting because I swore there was more, and there is not.
That is, yeah, that's interesting.
Right? So yeah, so no, I mean, I hear you. I definitely see how this could be a point of that. Like I said, I think for some, they're just interested in seeing, oh, somebody's going to get power, and that's what I'm reading for.
Mm.
Because I just want to read a story where people have magic powers because that'll be awesome.
Right. And is that like the draw so much? Like you just want to, it's interesting that idea that I just want to see someone wielding magic that alone. Like, I get it. Like, I try to translate all this into my own nerddom. So translating it into superhero comic books and going like, am I really just that fascinated in watching Superman like do a Superman thing? And I guess I'm picking out Superman because he's like classically the strongest superhero, but he's also the like kind of the most problematic to write and do compelling stories for, to the point where, you know, people frankly like the superhero without a power, Batman, way better. And I feel like there's a strong reason for that. I don't feel, even like having read superhero comics my whole life, I never felt like the draw is, ooh, I want to watch Storm make another Storm, right? Like it's not really what I'm. I want that on a
shirt. I want that on a shirt. I want to watch Storm make another Storm. Perfection. No, I feel I do wonder a couple things. One, I feel like there was a lot more. I mean, I could be wrong, but I feel like there's a lot more at the time, you know, when this came out, of comic books where people just have powers and are using them, right? You know, obviously there were the origins. Obviously, I'm not as familiar with comics. You can correct me, but I know of ones like origin stories, like Peter Parker's, right, where like he starts nerdy, and then we see him get a power, and then we see him start to learn to understand it, and then use it. Whereas I feel like someone like Wolverine, he's just a badass. We enter while he's back, right? And so like I feel as if powers are very much constantly woven in to narratives in comic books, right? So I feel like maybe there's not. I mean, obviously there could be the base level draw to see that, but I feel you're never lacking for that. Whereas again in fantasy, like if we go back, like back then, like I mean, in terms of movies or TV shows, there was like none. Like there were some some like cartoons you could watch a little bit, right? Like Knights of Justice or something. But there was almost no Visionaries.
Wait, what's
I'm
that?
going off school, baby.
What's
Knights
that?
of Justice is, I think, the only true one, but it barely had magic. So yeah, let's do a quick thing. So Knights of Justice was a Saturday morning cartoon where a group of football players, who the quarterback is named Arthur, get transported back in time by Merlin to be the Knights of the Round Table because Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table have vanished. And what was cool is it did have a fair bit of quasi-magic because it sort of stole from Visionaries. Like his shield was a dragon, you could summon a dragon from it, like Visionaries could summon, you know, something from their chest. So that was fantasy, but that was also urban fantasy, right? Like you even saw the Dungeons and Dragons one, also urban fantasy, where you've got the kids who take the roller coaster ride and then they're there. So like but that
wasn't urban fantasy, right? Like they were straight stuck in D&D land.
Sorry, not Portal. No, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say urban
Portal.
Fantasy. I'm going to say Portal fantasy. Portal fantasy. My bad. So yeah, that's
Jeff. I got one question before you go on. Knights of Justice.
Yeah.
How is the theme song to that? Was it a jam? Was it a jam?
It was jam. It's no Mask.
Right.
It's no Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but I mean it's fun.
Okay.
It got me going.
I'm gonna check it out.
So, no, you should. I mean, it's not. there's some that are just so good. I mean,
Mm.
it's not that level, but it's pretty cool. But anyway, my point is like finding like straight fantasy. What I mean is like you are in a fantasy world with people in a fantasy world. It might sound weird, but it was like rare. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's not a thing. Like it's just not that prevalent.
Right.
What it was much more common is portal fantasy in ways because I think it's more accessible for someone to follow a regular person being indoctrinated in your world.
Mm.
Anyway, the point with this was to say was that there just wasn't, at least from what I was reading, there wasn't a lot of magic in fantasy, which I know sounds crazy, but not at the amount that this story ends up having.
Right.
Like there would maybe be one person who has magic, like
Uh-huh.
they're special and then they get a power. You
Right,
know what I
right,
mean?
right.
Or maybe there's some demon king who's got a power or something like that, right? Or, like things like that. But there's magic everywhere. We've met Moraine who does magic.
Mm-hmm.
Like Gawain looks like she's gonna be able to do magic. Maeve seems like there's a whole school of like magic women.
Mm-hmm.
There's men who do magic that are being captured. There's the dreadlords that do magic. There's, this person coming into their magic. It's like a world full of superheroes, basically,
Mm-hmm.
which this was just not a norm. So in terms of like me getting hyped for something like that or readers getting hyped for that, I think, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because it just wasn't that common, at least again, not in my reading experience at
Right.
that time.
Right.
So I think there is something to that.
And I mean, and you bring up this idea of hype.
Mhm.
And again, I want to tie this back to the thing I just keep hitting on over and over again, that reveals
Yeah.
suck. Like, I want to be hyped for that. I want to be hyped for like, oh, Rand's gonna do all these crazy things,
Yeah.
but just fill me in that's because
Right.
right now I'm like, okay, maybe Rand could have done this. Maybe there's some other
Mhm.
wizard that
Sure.
did this to
Sure.
save them, because we're throwing new characters out like every single chapter. I don't know
Oh
that
yeah,
there's
so many
not
named characters.
somebody new who suddenly arrived. This
Right.
Goad or whatever his name is, dude, is like just suddenly
Right.
arrives, and like, so yeah, I mean, I feel like if I know that, like, I know this
Mm.
is Rand now, okay, that just ups like how far along he is on becoming this
Sure.
Dragon
Sure.
Reborn, which means consequences, which means something to
Right.
me, which puts that ticking clock of the madness on everything,
Right.
which it's gonna make me way more hype for that if you just
Right.
tell me that, right? Than
That
me
would be
guessing.
fascinating. Right. Yeah, I'd be fascinated to see this redone where you know who it is the whole time,
Mm,
right? Like what would that narrative look like? Because this is just this is threaded through the last 407
yeah,
odd pages,
yeah,
480, like where 480 pages of a mystery of who is it, right?
right.
And how long can that be entertaining? I gotta say, I'm
Especially
sure
when you
I
think it's the most obvious guy the whole time, right? Like,
right?
why
It seems
string
like
it
it's the most
along?
obvious fact, but we're not going to tell you. Yeah, I mean, to me, looking back, I probably just didn't even care because I was thinking of
Right.
other like ones. So you got Hobbit, right? Which is you've got wizards, but there's barely any of them,
Mm,
right? And then you got the one ring, which gives you a power.
mm,
You got like Sword of Shannara, where someone gets like a magic sword. That happens, right?
mm.
But like, like this many magic people, it's like I don't care who they are. There's magic people. Yes,
Yeah,
tell me
interesting.
more about the magic people. So I'm just, trying to embody that other side. I see your point. I see so many opportunities for conflict in that. And I agree with what you're saying, how intriguing it'd be, especially when it does seem, when the first half of the book was Rand, if it's not Rand, it would be like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, the other thing I was thinking when I read this is because, like, now I'm waiting for this Chekhov's gun of the freaking ruby dagger to go off, and I don't know,
Right.
like, when that's going to go off or
Sure.
what the heck's going on with that.
Right.
Other than it's alluded to his, this is Matt's Precious is just basically what I'm going to
Right.
be calling it.
Oh, yeah.
And, like, that's obviously something's going to happen with that. But again, I don't know nor do me not knowing kind of makes it hard for me to be invested in that because I don't know what the consequence. Yeah, I don't know what the ramification. Right, exactly. Yeah, I assume something bad, but that kind of doesn't hype you as much as knowing, well, here's what's bad that's going to happen with it, you know?
Right. No, completely. I mean, I know this is what you're going for, but it made me think of the scene between him and Matt where they like kind of yell at each other and then Matt like becomes human, right? You know, it was like, who would I even sell it to? You know what I mean? Like, I just like that they actually have that conversation. And, you know, I just feel like there's a lot of those just really fun interactions with like the inn being like, you know, just not a good place. And you get that with him just like backhanding the woman and then like Rand sneaking out, but then going back into it. And then the bouncers have their own bet. They feel like their own people. And that's the thing. It's like, I hear what you mean about, should I care about these people because they're just going to be here and gone. But I don't know. I mean, maybe it's because I like traveling. So I do like, you know, interacting with people. You know, I can appreciate interacting with people for just short periods that many of these people feel like they've got their own agenda. And I like that because then it makes it feel like we're walking through a believable world butting up against, you know, their problems. But yeah, I hear what you mean about this sort of big reveal of where the lightning will come from. If it is Rand, is it Rand? If it's not Rand, is it Matt? What's it going to be Matt with the dagger? And are they going to be caught by a fade? And, you know, there are just a lot of questions driving the narrative. And you know, it's tough because in some ways you'd think, oh, questions are good. But from our conversations, I do also get your point that we're missing what could be more conflict if we knew.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Well, I am guessing I have actually not looked ahead here, but I'm guessing this is not going to be a Rand chapter that we get next.
I should have bet you on it. But what I can't
believe you know, right? Or do you not remember? Well, it's probably hard to remember.
So for mine, my page has the next page, like where mine ends, so I can already see it. But I can't believe we're not talking about the man in silhouette shaking his fist at the end of the chapter.
I don't even care, man. Goad or Hawk? He did not know.
Oh my goodness.
I guess I took this at face value. Maybe I shouldn't be. And I was like, I literally don't care which of these idiots are shaking his fist. I kind of felt like it was Hack because he'd be, I think, more upset because his inn just blew up. Well, I don't know how much of his inn blew up. I guess just kind of this like outside storage, you know, off to the side storage place.
Right. I think it would be him because I feel like Goad would be chasing after him, right? That's just staying where he is. What kind of blew my mind is actually for a book I was writing, I named a character Hake, and I didn't even remember that this character's name was here. And I was like, oh, that's just weird. Just like a funny thing, like you hear about musicians, right? Who'll come up with a song, and then it's like, oh, wait, crap, this is a song I've already heard.
I've heard it, but I don't remember hearing it.
Precisely. That was a trip for me. But no, I just thought it was so funny because I had totally forgotten about the shaking fist because, like you're saying, it kind of doesn't matter in this moment. And it's just like, I don't know. It was just... I'm not saying it was a good chuckle, but I definitely laughed when I saw it. I was like, what? After all this, shaky fist? So yeah, no, I am going to be fascinated by the continuation of this. Will you survive the remaining, how many pages do we have left in this book? We've got...
So this says we're at 453,
right?
And we need to get to 751. So yeah, so this one's saying we got like straight up 300 more pages.
Oh, we shouldn't be quite that much because we're at 482 and then 750.
I guess it depends on how they're counting the pages.
I think they're probably counting the big fat glossary at the end.
Makes sense.
Yeah, we got like about 268, whatever.
All right.
So
all right. Wow, that's actually in how like. Oh, okay. Yeah. So like in the amount of story that we went through, because I see this 60%. It says on my Kindle.
Well, we're 2/3.
But again, we're at 2/3. We got a third left. Whoa, so that seems like nothing at the pace. Like if I kind of think about like what happened at this much. Like, it feels like not that much more is going to happen. Like, because I'm still thinking here. Well, here's the other thing about the narrative that I think is interesting. And then I guess I'm starting to doubt, but the story kind of sets you up that this is another thing that I don't know if I like or not, that I'm like, oh, we're going to be at Tar Valon at some point. This is like culminating to that. He had the dream where he was there.
Right.
I just like, but that kind of also zaps my momentum a little bit because it makes me feel like for all the revealiness that we're doing, I feel like I've just been told what this is culminating in. And like, so that also makes me feel like, ugh, it's kind of a battle to turn the page because I'm like, well, I guess that is like a surprise that I sort of don't want, like I don't want to feel like, oh, I just know where we're going here and I'm just waiting to get there. Like going through like with this family, I'm like, let's just be at Tar Valon, man. Let's like see what's up or what's gonna happen, so. And now, like, when I'm thinking, oh my gosh, we're 2/3 through, it feels like they won't even get there at this pace now.
This is exactly what I want to talk about. I thought it'd be fun with this much left to say, one, you're just naturally doing it. Thank you. Just kind of like your thoughts about the rest. But I did want to say, like, what do you think is going to happen? What do you hope is going to happen, right? Because, Tar Valon seems like a place we thought we would already be at, probably, right? We are not, and nor do we seem close. So now, it seems like Tar Valon would be the end, right? But as you just said, that doesn't necessarily seem exciting. I mean, I can see how it would be a logical location. Tar Valon is where it's going to be safe, but maybe not really. And they're trying to avoid things on the way there. But I feel like this is where it's hard since we're not seeing from the bad people's perspective, right? All we know is like they're running and maybe they're going to get caught, right? But so there's much more tension for parents.
They're still headed that way though, right? Because going to Camelin means that they're still headed in that general direction.
Four Kings is actually on the map. I was really pleasantly surprised because he even described like the south road coming in. I was like, oh crap, you can see that. Like Lugar going to Four Kings and everything. So they're real close to Camelin, right? So Camelin's been like another big sort of, set piece we've been promised for a while. So I think that's sort of the immediate one we're looking forward to, but it's hard because we've got no idea what's going to happen there. They haven't been thinking about a lot, maybe a little bit, that type of thing, that things will be okay in Camelot, but that definitely wasn't the push of this chapter. So it does lead to like, what are the big questions that we're wanting as a reader? Is Rand the Dragon Reborn? Okay. Will they get to Tar Valon safe? I guess, right? But I would sort of agree that it's tough to know where is this book going.
Right.
And if you don't quite know where the book's going, then it does get harder to get excited for it.
Yeah? Okay, I'm going to make
What would you want to see? Oh, go for it. Predictions. This is what I was hoping for.
What would I want to see? Yeah, I'm not sure. I'll have to think on that. But my prediction next chapter, I think, without having looked at it, I think we're going to go back to Perrin. And here's the reason why I think that. Because I think, Moraine and Lan are going to swoop in and save Perrin's ass. Because they still have, like, the coin there, right? I think...
Bornhall just got the coin.
Bornhall just grabbed it. So, like, they are near that coin, which should be leading Moraine, like, directly to them. But I don't think we would check in because I think it's going to be, like, she's freaking swoops in or something. So
we wouldn't see a Nynaeve chapter before that because it would be too much information.
That's my guess. Let me see. Oh, this is another Rand chapter then with the sword.
Yep.
All right. More Rand chapter. All right.
I was going to say I like this conceit that Matt can't see. And so that would make me a little excited for next year, but it's a tiny little moment thing. I will say that anything
I didn't catch that would be like kind of permanent. Oh.
Yeah, it's just him walking and Rand helping him. But we don't know. I mean, I like the idea that was happening at the end chapter. Will it continue to happen, right? But I was going to say, I would be in your shoes as well, thinking if I couldn't see the next chapter, because one, I would just want more Bornhall at this point. Like, to me, that's the most conflicting point of the story right now, right? Like, Matt and Rand are on a journey and stuff could happen on that journey and it's fun. I like it. But like the craziness is with Perrin and Bornhall, and kind of like we kind of, as you said, got a villain but he seems rational, and so it's awesome. And we meant to even talk a little bit more about that last time, but our other one was going so long. I love Bornhold so much, so I would be like, give me more Bornhold. What's
Yeah.
happening to Perrin? So yeah, no, I think. Are you feeling that at all too? Did you just think it would be natural for that to be next, or would you actually want to see that next?
Yeah, no,
Out of
I'd
curiosity.
rather I'd rather go back to that story. You know,
Mhm.
oh, that brought me did bring me to another thing that I wanted to say though that I'm a
Oh
little
yeah.
have a little complaint about in that like Rand
Oh
and Perrin they even have and I kind of appreciated this back in 31 when this girl is paying attention to
yeah.
him and
Right.
he has like
Yeah.
the exact same thought that Perrin has, but in reverse, where he's
Right.
like, Perrin would
Right.
know what to do, and I'm like, why
Yep.
are these kids so deluded? But then I
I
was
love
like,
it.
do they both have to be? Why are they like so like each other? Like I actually don't feel a big difference between Perrin and Rand
Ooh,
right now. They feel
interesting.
the same. They're on these separate adventures, but they're both awkward around the girls. They're both like,
Mm,
oh, I'm burdened by this like dream or power that I don't want. You know, they
yes.
neither of them
Yes.
feel very confident in themselves.
Mhm, mhm.
And I was like, wow, they feel like very the same. Almost like I'm just reading the same character, but they're in two different
That's
situations.
so interesting. Yeah, so my initial reaction is like, what are you talking about? They're so different. But of course I'm, you know,
Yeah, you know the
13 books in or
rest.
whatever.
Right, right.
Right, exactly. But to your point, because I paused and was thinking about it as you were saying it too. Yeah, no, I totally hear you. Well, we talked about this before, that I think because we were both like, it would be awesome to have wolf powers, right?
Right.
That are like, why does everyone hate the powers that they get? I want powers kind of thing. But so yeah, no, it's definitely been something we've already been hitting for Rand. Like I get Rand not wanting powers because you go insane, right?
Right.
Like, cool, I'm fine for that one, right? But yeah, so no, I would agree. They both are awkward around the ladies. They both have, they're both got a desire to kind of like go back home as we see
Mm-hmm.
Rand walking through the village and reminding him of them. Just the descriptions of villages, so loved it. Anyway, but yeah, no, I would agree. I would agree. Obviously, as I'm sure you could already tell from my initial reaction, they end up being very different. And we do get some hints of it
Hmm.
in the early Perrin chapter. But like, yeah, trying to remember that we were given in the very beginning Perrin chapter and now, I don't see that. Yeah, I could see being a reader now feeling that way completely. Completely.
Right on, right
Yep.
on. Well,
Which, wait, I got one last
yeah, yeah,
quick thing.
yeah.
Just it's funny because it's the same deal. So if I was in your shoes, I think I would think exactly as you are also about where this story is headed.
Uh huh.
But since I know where the story is headed, I have actually seen some things listed, but it would definitely have not stayed in my mind either. So that's why I'm also curious to hear one, because obviously as certain parts of the story become not your jam, I am curious what you would like to see. And please take your time thinking about that. And then I think it's also fun to just predict. So it'll be interesting to see what predictions end up being true. And when we do get to the end, if you feel it was foreshadowed at all.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Hmm. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll keep making totally off base predictions because it's fun for me. So I'm
No, no,
sorry
it's
about that.
it's cool, and not to give away the end or anything, because we things are going to happen. I won't say anything else. I'm just going to dig myself a hole because there's multiple things. But anyway, yeah, no, I think this is fun, and I think we should keep this up, especially because we are getting near the end of the book.
All right, sounds good, everybody, and we will see you next week.
We'll catch you then.